at 42,000 feet above the Baltic Sea. Colonel Pavel Kusov wasn't staring at a sensor glitch. He was looking at a confirmed kill shot on a Phantom. For 23 years, Kusov had piloted jets. He developed a sixth sense for the difference between random atmospheric noise and the echo of solid metal. His MiG-31, equipped with the massive Zoslin phased array radar, had just accomplished the impossible. Piercing the cloak, it pierced the B-2 Spirit's invisibility cloak. The steady tone buzzing in his helmet confirmed the deadly lock. His thumb hovered over the red firing actuator. A single ounce of pressure would wreck $2 billion. It would turn American stealth technology into a fireball, plunging toward the dark waves below. Yet Kusov froze. He didn't pull the trigger. Instead, he watched the display, his pulse hammering a rhythm against the flight suit. The patrol began as a standard defensive sweep. Russian jets were simply flexing muscles near the sovereign border. Command hinted at an anomaly. Earlier that evening, intelligence reports flagged strange refueling patterns over the North Sea. Digital signatures appeared and evaporated like mist. A high-value asset was operating in their backyard. KUSAs sorted immediately while others flew rigid search grids. The colonel trusted his guts, pushing his patrol vector further west today. Relied on intuition honed by thousands of flight hours. The American intruder remained undetected for the duration. Its radar absorbance skin reduced its cross-section to the size of a marble, rendering it invisible to ground batteries. The B-2 was the apex of stealth secret research, compressed into a flying wing designed to slip defenses. But the Foxhound was a relic built for a different war, designed to hunt bombers across frozen Arctic. Its brute force radar possessed raw power that often shocked modern strategists. More importantly, Kusov knew where to look. He knew how to toggle frequencies to catch the momentary glint of something that theoretically shouldn't be there. Discovery came down to pure chance, a fleeting reflection perhaps from a weapon-bayed door, cycling open enough. His fire control computer snagged a location and projected a vector of. He banked hard, slamming throttles to full. The twin engines roared, devouring fuel as the interceptor surged to supersonic speeds to close the gap. Now fuel levels were irrelevant. Only the hunt mattered. His system locked on, and the ghost solidified into target's acquisition confirmed. Missiles armed, all that remained was the execution. He had them cold to American aviators. There they were likely scrambling through emergency checklists, realizing their cloak of invisibility had just failed. Kusov visualized it. He visualized the crimson warning and the radar warning receiver screaming its high-pitched alarm. He knew terror. He had been on the receiving end of a lock, feeling that electric spike of adrenaline approaching fast. It was a universal fear that connected every aviator into an ejection seat. Protocol ruled. A strategic bomber operating this close to sovereign airspace, clearly on a combat footing, was a hostile target. The rules of engagement authorized him to fire if he perceived an imminent threat to the motherland immediately. Interceptor pilots carried the weight of nations, trusted to make split-second choices that could ignite World War III. Yet a sudden doubt froze his hand. Maybe it was the quality of the return signal, not crisp. It wasn't the hot echo of a commercial airliner, but something fuzzy fighting to slip away. They battled him. Its onboard computers tried to spoof guidance systems, whispering to his radar that it was looking at empty air. The Americans possessed top-tier countermeasures, but at this proximity, the A-33 missiles under Kuznetsov's wings had certain kill probability. The Americans knew it too. They maintained a steady course, straight and level, no desperate banking or evasive turning. Either they prayed their stealth would re-engage, or they realized jinking would only broadcast their position to sensors. It was a gamble with the highest stakes, and Kusov held the winning hand. Suddenly, a transmission cracked. Static encrypted intel flashed onto his multifunction display. Kusov read the text and his blood turned to ice. Blackout confirmed. The military complex near Bryansk suffered a catastrophic blackout. Transformers detonated in a chain reaction mimicking an EMP strike. The timing was too perfect to be coincidental. An American bomber lurks over the Baltic. Mysterious detonations. Radar site at that facility was dead. Likely neutralized casualty reports were still flowing in. But crews worked. Kuzov's mind snapped to Alexei. His 20-year-old son. The boy was a cadet at the Military Engineering Academy there. The academy was located barely 200 meters from that radar station. He had spoken to Alexei only yesterday. The boy was nervous about finals, complaining about mess hall stew, asking when his father could visit him soon. He wanted to show his grandson the jets. They discussed Alexei's dreams of designing the next generation of frames. Kuzov recalled the pride in his son's voice. An innocence not yet hardened by the grim reality of service. His thumb trembled against the weapon's release. The enemy bomber was right there, defenseless. He could vaporize it instantly. He could claim self-defense, retaliation for an attack on the homeland. It would start a chain of events immediately. Crisis, escalation. Perhaps total war. The Americans had struck first. They destroyed infrastructure. They killed soldiers. He was justified. He would be a hero. The state media would lionize him for proving American tech was vulnerable. Or not. Or he could let them fly on these two pilots who had just attacked his country, killing his boy. Duty demanded fire, but Kuzov was a father first. The uncertainty about Alexei paralyzed him more than any. He juggled his radio bypassing standard channels to demand an immediate update on the Bryansk Engineering Academy. Voice died. The seconds dragged like hours. Outside the horizon began to bleed. The MiG flew on autopilot while Kuzov's universe shrank down to the voice in his earpiece. The update arrived. Academy dorms intact. All students accounted for. The destruction was surgically limited to the power grid and the radar. Kuzov exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The tension in his chest unspun. Alexei was safe. The Americans had struck with impossible precision. They threaded the needle, taking out the military asset while sparing schools. They could have leveled the entire grid. A slightly bigger payload, a deviation of 50 meters, meant mere dust. 200 young men would have burned in their beds. But they didn't. Someone in that B-2 chose life. A faceless enemy had made a choice. They dialed back the yield, perhaps compromising mission success to ensure lives. It was a decision that risked court-martial. He glanced at the radar scope. The lock was solid. The B-2's defenses were crumbling under sustained radar energy. The American crew was likely waiting for the launch warning, bracing for the end. Kuzov thought about their restraint. He thought about Alexei waking up safe to the news of a power outage. He thought about the pilot. He thought about who valued Russian children enough to take that risk. Then Colonel Kuzov did something. That would baffle military analysts and historians for decades. He disengaged the lock, now killed the weapon system. The lock vanished on the American displays. The threat ring would disappear, showing the pursuer turning away as if he had lost the trail. Kuzov keyed his mic immediately. Command frequency negative contact. Just ghost signals and atmospheric noise. Patrol vector. The lie would be transparent to anyone analyzing the flight data later, but it was plausible enough for the paperwork. In this strange theater of geopolitical conflict, where nations fought while pretending to be at peace, the official record was often just a mutually agreed upon fiction. The truth that he caught an attacker remained. It would remain a secret between him and the sky. As he banked west, putting miles away. Putting miles between his jet and the bomber. He processed the event. It was an unauthorized exchange. A moment of silent communication, ignoring borders one father, acknowledging another's mercy. It wouldn't change the war. The radar site was still smoking ruble. American sorties would continue daily. The balance of power remained rigid. But in a small way, it proved humanity could survive cockpits. Inside the B-2, Spirit Major Serachun and Captain Marcus Williams watched the Foxhound fade from screens. They watched with a mix of confusion and nausea. They had been seconds away from deploying chaff. They were seconds from attempting maneuvers that likely would have failed. The Russian had them dead rights. Williams had his hand on the countermeasures, ready to flood air with foil. Instead, the interceptor walked. The interceptor simply walked away. The threat evaporated. Chun thought about her decision made an hour prior. She didn't expect a reprieve from a Russian pilot who had every reason to fire. William spoke. Williams asked the question that would echo in debriefings for months. He had us why? Break off. Chun didn't have an answer that would satisfy the generals. Maybe the MiG had a glitch. Unlikely. Maybe the pilot feared political fallout. Plausible but inconsistent with aggressive Russian doctrine. Or maybe he understood, and this is what Chun chose to believe. He understood, he saw the restraint, and returned it. He saw the restraint and returned it in kind. Pilot to pilot, they flew on toward England. They flew toward debriefing rooms and official lies. Behind them, the sun fully claimed the sky now. It was lighting up a world that had come within a heartbeat of a very different morning. Two warriors held the power of life and death and chosen grace. The missions would go on. The strategic chess game would continue. But something new had been born over the Baltic. A realization that people operating these machines were more than extensions of state policy. The official Russian report blamed faulty wiring for the explosion. A cover story both sides accepted totally. NATO continued operations as if nothing occurred. But in classified vaults, analysts studied the encounter. Parsing logic, they tried to parse the logic of those missing seconds. The Americans wondered why their stealth failed. The Russians questioned why their ace pilot reported empty sky when the tapes showed a hard target. Years later, a photograph sat on Chun's desk at the weapons school. She used it to teach ethics to young aviators. It showed Russian cadets standing outside their dorms. It was taken the morning after a night they don't know they had survived. She used it. She used it to explain command weight, teaching them that the hardest choices are not about tactics. Conscience, her students listened with youthful arrogance, believing they would always follow orders. She never told them the full story. Somewhere in Moscow, Colonel Kusov occasionally raised a vodka glass, a private salute to an unknown pilot who saved his son, and whom he saved in return. In the cold math of warfare, such moments were statistical errors, but they were real small proofs. Small proofs that even at humanity could accept itself against the machine. He never told his squad. But watching Alexei laugh at a family dinner, dreaming of the future USAF, knew he made the right call. Some decisions are bigger than duty. They exceed national flags. They are about the silent agreement that being human matters more than flags painted on their wings.